All right, let's jump into things. It's 10:19 on the 25th of June. Wow, we just seem to be sort of flying through the it's flying through these months at the moment. I know it always sort of feels like this, but it's always like, oh wow, just started a new month. We got NFP, and it's like a movie. It goes all shaky, and it's like, okay, here we are, end of the month, bang. Anyway, on with the news. But look, overnight and that actually had a couple of bits of data yesterday, which I kind of skimmed over. Actually, I realized when sort of watching it back actually that I was like, nah, nothing, 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 nothing. But we did have a little bit of stuff happening last night. So we had this Richmond Manufacturing Index, and that. Sorry, actually through the day. No, so we did. It was true. We didn't really have anything through the day. We had CPI out of Canada, but meh, nothingness kind of thing for what we're sort of trading. But Richmond Manufacturing Index, and that. So 1159, which I always find a little bit odd. Sort of BOE seems to come out with these kind of things that are like 1 past 5 and this kind of stuff. But this one, 1159, coming out here. Anyway, came in better than expected. So it was expected to go on, to the downside. Still quite a strong negative number. So it's kind of like, again, it's one of those gray areas. It's bad, but it's better than it was expected. So you should think that you would have possibly a little bit more of a positive response to that. But of course, 1 minute later, you had sort of Powell coming out and talking, which I'll get to in a moment as well. But we had the consumer confidence, and I think this definitely had, excuse me, a bigger impact on the markets than, or at least for US dollar, than any of this sort of manufacturing, which is, as I said, it's still a negative number, even though it's not as bad as it was. It's kind of like, okay, well, you're not necessarily like going like, yeah, let's buy, pump it up on this, but it's kind of more in the case of, okay, we don't need to drastically buck it out and sell it. But of course, then a minute later, you've got the consumer confidence came out, and this came out, and as you can see, they expected it to sort of match and still be up quite strong. That got revised up just a scratch, expected to be up here, and that actually came in quite low, 93. So a fair drop off with that, and you saw that with the market as well. So US dollar sort of like already sort of being sold down through the whole day, just got dumped again, just off that. And then we had sort of Powell talking and sort of fielding a bunch of questions. And you kind of sort of saw US dollar really just sort of grind at its lows. Just having a look at sort of how long, yeah, for about half an hour or so, then it started to find a little bit of support as it sort of came into well, as it came into support, find a little bit of buying as it came into support. So it was interesting with that. I'll get over the chart at the moment. It did leave, DXY did leave its gap, so that's probably a little bit of a target that we can use at some point. Coming through data today, so we had a little bit of sort of BOJ data just out before trade balance. It's moving up and that. So, oh no, so that's New Zealand. So here we had we go. I actually don't know what the SPP are. Change in the service prices corporation. Okay, okay. So similar to all these sort of things like PCE and that, I suppose, but not something that I typically kind of pay too close attention to. One that we are sort of paying attention to today is CPI for Aussie dollar. Comes in just over an hour. So this earlier in the week, 2.4 was the previous, and it was the expectation was 2.4 as well. So 2.3 has dropped down now. So the idea, obviously, with these sort of things, as I keep sort of reiterating, is that you got the dual mandate. You got the idea that you want to fight inflation, but you want to obviously sort of protect employment and that kind of stuff as well. So if CPI comes in lower, say it comes in 2.3 or even 2.2, 2.1, or whatever, anywhere in that direction, well, that's sort of going, oh, okay, well, CPI is not proving to be a persistent problem, or maybe it is persistent, but it's not moving in the wrong direction. It's not like it's moving up. If the inflation's moving up, well, you got to be cautious about sort of cutting because obviously more money into the system that's just going to fuel more, or potentially just sort of fuel the inflation sort of story a little bit more. And, you could see that sort of tick up a little bit higher. And the same is true in the other direction. So if it does come in a little bit lower, they can go, okay, well, hold on, wait. We're not looking so much as inflation being the main sort of main sort of issue for us. It's at least moving in the right direction. So maybe we could test the waters with a cut. So any sort of lower print, 2.3 and below, is definitely, I would say, going to be detrimental for the Aussie dollar. Now, Aussie dollar's like bounced right back, of course, but it is, as I keep saying, I think sort of it's really just at the tail end of what's happening with the US dollar. The US dollar is being absolutely obliterated yet again, and Aussie recovered 120 points or so on that. But you did see as DXY and US dollar was being bought up across the market, Aussie was very susceptible, dropped down 100 and something points. And obviously, as soon as the US dollar sells off, bang, it rebounds. So that'll be probably the main, well, not probably, that is the main sort of item on the cards. It's actually the only item on the cards for Asia today. Moving forward tonight, we've got not really much through Euro again, and then Powell's talking again tonight. So he did sort of field a bunch of questions and put out his sort of statement last night, and it was more or less much of the same kind of sort of stuff, and sort of erring on the side of caution, which is a bit in contrast, as I sort of said, to a couple of these other sort of speakers that you've had throughout the week. So we did have, where was it? So Wednesday. Yeah, so we had this Hammock person speaking yesterday, this Beth Hammock or something. I had a quick look who it was. She came out and sounded a little bit more hawkish, which is a bit contrast to the last two sort of main headline sort of speaker people that we've sort of seen the last couple of sessions. I think it's Bowman and Waller, both of which are sort of coming out and sort of saying, "Oh, look, you know what, we can sort of cut in July, and that shouldn't be too much of an issue," which I think is a bit interesting because if you sort of look at, it's weird how I just looked it up before a little snippet tool thing here. If we zoom in, how we zoom in on this? So this is a sort of like, kind of course, these things, nothing's locked in stone, but, basically if you were to sort of say, look, are they sort of hawkish, dovish, or centrist, both Bowman and Waller both mentioned as sort of more sort of hawkish. And it sort of says, look, as of June 2025, just reading up another, I didn't cut the whole thing. Uh, uh, I know, sorry, let me just find which one I was talking about. Anyway, whichever, whatever. The point is, oh, here we go. Yeah, so it's based on their public statement, voting patterns, and known policy preferences. So, it's obviously out there that these guys are typically more in the hawkish camp. At least as of, mid 2025, which is basically where we're at now or a month or so ago. But both of them have come out this week sounding very dovish, saying, hey, look, you know what, maybe we could cut in July. Maybe that's the right time to do it. So, in contrast to what we've kind of seen a lot from them some previously. So, look, it's not really sort of, oh my God, here's the secret sort of source or anything with anything, but it's just something worth noticing or something I found interesting anyway, that you're seeing the two names that are mentioned more on the hawkish side of it are the two names that have come out and spoken out like that this week, which were two also apparently Trump appointed people. And of course, there, there's always these things going on with it all, but we know that sort of Powell's coming to the end of his sort of period. Maybe these people are sort of showing that they can sort of toe the line. I think I mentioned this yesterday as well, so I won't repeat myself. But it's just interesting to see how these people come out and talk. And anyway, so Powell came out and he was sort of saying a little bit more, you know, let's calm down. Let's not sort of jump the gun with it all. He does sound like he's open to the idea of cutting, but I think the main thing that he's definitely looking for is the jobs market. And he said, look, if the jobs market does deteriorate, that could force them to sort of cut a little bit quicker. So I think NFP, things like JOLT, ADP, these things are going to be very sort of crucial to sort of, Powell's sort of outlook. And also, he's still of the belief that we're going to see more inflation through June and sort of, the next couple of months due to the tariffs. This is what everybody's saying. Oh, no, 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 the tariffs haven't had any effect, haven't had any effect. So I think look, fair game to him in that he's putting himself on the line because a lot of other people are going, well, the data isn't showing this. It's not showing that sort of like we've got inflation, sort of due to well, basically at all, but mainly in this case due to the sort of tariffs. And if that's not the case, then we should be right to cut. But his attitude was, look, and I think he sort of said the actual words, if you look backwards, then yes, you're right. I understand how you reached that sort of consensus. But what he's saying is, look, I still think that forward thinking, we are going to see some inflation. So I don't want to preemptively cut and then find that inflation does come, plus you've cut, which will double exacerbate it, and inflation will spike a lot higher. So he's just going on the side of caution. But what I think he can sort of trade a little, well, trade, sort of plan a little bit more off are the job numbers. So he thinks inflation is coming. Obviously, yet to sort of see this in the numbers. We'll see how this comes out. So CPI will be important. Obviously, PCE this Friday will be important. But I think sort of NFP and ADP jolts, these kind of things are going to be the ones that really sort of cement a bit of that outlook. But even in saying that, the US dollar got smacked. It's right on its lows at the moment anyway. So we'll jump onto charts, have a quick look at things. So we'll start off with DXY just because obviously that's the flavor at the moment. And what a disappointing rejection it was from here. Look, 99.4 is where I've been touting for ages. This is where we expected it to get hit. This is the sort of big rejection zone over here. If you get onto, that was like 15-minute trading on 15 minutes. You can see that this is a sort of vital area where we were like, look, it needs to break this sort of zone through here. Got into it and smashed. And not just smashed, but absolutely hammered. Like that's a 1.5% move from the highs down to low there. 1.72. Give or take a cent or so. Like that is smashed. And what, just off the back of sort of like, yeah, you had that sort of get onto a smaller time frame here. You had that sort of consumer confidence, which was this move down here, which I said sort of like it was looking like it was trying to base for a bit. Consumer confidence bad, poof, smacked back down. And again, look, it's kind of sort of grinding itself out a little bit of a rounded bottom here. It did leave yesterday's gap, so I'll put an alert on that. Closing, what was it, Tuesday? Closing Tuesday's gap. So that'll definitely be a target through this session should we see a little bit of a run up over here. But where it did sort of come down to is just right into its sort of support zone. So, excuse me. So yeah, absolutely obliterated from that sort of resistance level just up the top over there. But as you can see, it has sort of hit its little support zone that we've had sort of marked out here. So look, where it's kind of at the moment, you can sort of kind of almost get rid of these. That trade's done. Disappointing. And we can sort of think, okay, what could you possibly do here? So look, the sort of forever sort of optimist with the US dollar, despite it getting absolutely smashed down over and over again. If this rushes up, if this finds itself to push back up through here, that's still the breakout level. We've seen that because you know that there was a heavy lot of settling coming down here. That would give you one of those sort of high hill bottoms. Now, this is a bit of a sort of long shot here, but it is the sort of setup where you would see it. That would be the move there. This is not a sort of typical kind of setup, but it's the idea of this sort of grind up, one last flush out, which is what it's done just now. Where can I show this a little bit better? Grind up, flush out, and then moves. This is the only way I can see this thing sort of moving forward here at the moment. Which, look, that is a very typical strong bottom sort of setup. But, and there's always and there is a big sort of but with these sort of things at the moment. It's hard to sort of get on side of these things when it is just so heavy. And it's really coming down into a scene. But that's the whole point of these moves sometimes, is to sort of really everybody gets stoked. I mean, you saw how much I was sort of, I mean, not that everybody's trading the way I am, but how much I'm sort of like, yep, here we go, we've broken the channel or the resistance, you got the back test, you got the high, here we go, bob, and all these people sort of position themselves leveraged up, and what do? Bang, smash them out and absolutely rip those people apart. when their mentality is done, when their bank accounts are done, when they're like, oh Jesus, I've put it all on the line, and here we go, and I got hammered and destroyed, that's when they run it. So look, I'm not sort of fully counting it out, but it is one of those kind of things where you're right on the line at the moment, so you got to be pretty cautious with these kind of things. But a couple of little areas, if we get onto the lower time frame, is obviously I think we could still do some sort of little upside here. We're pretty heavily oversold on the 4 hour. I think this could find some sort of support and rally around here. Look at the first target to sort of be that closing of the gap from yesterday. Generally, market doesn't like to leave gaps open. I'm surprised it didn't actually even rally up yesterday, because this is what I was looking for yesterday. I thought there'd be a little bit more of a sort of rebalance and a move up here to close that gap and push back down. So the fact that it's left the gap open for basically over 24 hours now probably means that you could see some more just grind down here. But market doesn't like to leave gaps. So I would definitely say there is a little bit of a push coming up to the top side over here, and then see what the market does at this level. So they're the two levels. Let's just move back to where I can find it each time. Gets lost on the chart. They're the two levels that I want to see what happens here, and then I want to see what happens still at this line here. So still the same idea as I was saying yesterday. I want, like, if you want to get it, if you want to see a move up, it's not going to come in a straight shot. You got to reclaim this level here, and to do that, you got to sort of see what are the sellers going to do. Should they even get a shot to have a shot here? That's the kind of move. Again, so close the gap, 99.4. Yep. No, sorry, 98.4. I was going to say 99.4. No, 98.4, 98.6, and see what the sellers do there. So closing the gap, I think, is a reasonable sort of just little target that we can sort of aim up for, and then sort of like obviously see what happens here. Because if the sellers come in, as in like, they were buying it here, buying it here, buying it here, and the people that were trying to buy it here go, oh, geez, at least I've got a shot to get out, and they pile it back down over here, well, that's probably a good indicator that you're going to be going down lower. But should they sort of push it and allow it to go up here relatively easy, you can have a little bit of a pullback, but say a little bit of a pullback, and you push through, and then sort of you see this level become a buying level again. That'll give you a good platform to then sort of be targeting up towards 99.4. So you got to take out the smaller levels to be able to be sort of like qualify for these higher levels up above. So we'll see how that sort of goes. But yeah, certainly downside, you're coming into this support, which we've seen tested a number of times, and this is actually a level from way back, like back over here. So this is a level that we had marked out from March 2022. So as you see, I've got an alert set up down the bottom side of that, which could probably sort of see a little bit of a drop off. You might get a bit of a reaction around some of these other levels here that we've got marked out, but you deal with that when you get to that. But for the time being, I would say you probably sort of due for a little bit of a push up sort of through here, at least sort of close that gap and then see what the market wants to do with it. But certainly that was a big reaction. And the thing that shocks me about this is like that this reaction here, the bulk of it was from those comments as far as I could see, just from that what's her name, Bowman, sort of saying, hey, look, maybe we could cut in July. That's an overreaction. And I said this, I think, even on the weekend thing, that these are headlines. Like, it's not like, apart from the fact that she's just like one of the members, it's not like Powell coming out and saying it. So just one of the members, and yes, you had that in the backup of what's his name, Waller on Friday saying the same thing, and then on top of that you had the ceasefire. So we know that the ceasefire, the calming down of the war is negative for US dollar. We've seen it, the reaction, the way that it's reacted previously. I think this the one. Yeah, so you could see, boom, boom. You could see very much de-escalation was a move down. Them getting involved. Never filled these ones out. I forgot what they are now. The news is coming so quick and fast and that with it all, but then bombs get involved in that, de-escalation, and then what was it? I think it was here, probably this candle, sort of saying, whoops. And this is what ceasefire. So you can see that obviously sort of like, the US dollar was being bought up on any sort of continued stuff. So look, I mean, these guys apparently yesterday as well on that, they had a ceasefire. Then there was like all these headlines coming out saying Iran just shot some more missiles. They broke the ceasefire within 20 minutes. Then Iran's coming out saying, no, no, we didn't. And it's just so much headline garbage data, no, not data, garbage headlines sort of coming out. One, you don't know what fully to believe. And as I said yesterday, I think the whole idea of it was a bit stupid that they're like, oh, look, ceasefires at this time. And so these guys are like sort of, it's like two kids having a fight. And it's sort of like, okay, no, we've got to stop. And everyone's like, "Do, do, 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 do. Get those last little slaps in. Okay, no, 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 no touching, no touching, no touching. Like just up until the very last second. You know what I mean? So we'll see how they go. But yeah, as I say, mainly what we're sort of concerned with is the chart, the price action, and to sort of see if US dollar. I mean, look, this is a 4 hour. It's overbought. Sorry, oversold. It's got a little support here. See if this can get a little bit of a rally. And first target's just to close that gap. So Aussie. Big bounce back up, as I said, yes. So like, we dropped. I mean, we was already sort of dropping, and this was actually Friday's, if I'm correct. Yeah, so it's sold off just coming into the weekend, which in fair call was a great move for them because that's exactly what the thing is. Like maybe we get bombing over the weekend. Yes, we did. Bang, boom, it sold down, but the recovery here was just frustrating as all hell. Obviously short with the Aussie, short from sort of like, up in the sort of 65s. That's fine, gives you leeway. But this thing was just, so I say there's three parts to a trade: analysis, execution, and management. Analysis, well, as I said, I've been short from these areas over here. Execution, well, I mean, I put my money where my mouth is, so, I'll give myself credit on that as well, and I got a pretty good level. Management, I'll give myself like a I don't know. Can I even give myself a two? Well, I'm not out, so I guess that's okay. But what I could have really sort of done to maximize these things is obviously try and trail this a little bit more. But my feeling and thoughts were sort of like, if we look back at not necessarily that we were going to see something like this, but these are the kind of things, and because I'm testing, excuse me, a new strategy on this other account, which is, I mean, it's not new as in like, wow, no one's ever thought of it, but new for me because I'm typically in and out, which is very profitable, very like super, super profitable for me. So I really don't have any need to swap these things except for, I don't know if it's an ego sort of thing that sort of like you always sort of kick yourself afterwards, like, I'll get at this position here and then I'll sell it here. And then you go, oh, wow, if I just held. And of course, this is the flip side of it all. These ones here goes down, 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 down for a couple of days. Yeah, that came all the way back up. Um, but that was the thought that maybe this would be coming down and test and search for these stops around 63. I thought one more leg down, test these buyers down here. It was looking very bearish with it all, and this bounce back up, just ridiculous. So anyway, look, on with that. That's just a little recap of sort of where I am with my sort of trade in regards to this. So look, it's into a bit of an area which is quite interesting because of course, I leave these levels marked out here where I'm sort of saying, okay, look, this is the support that they needed to hold. It broke through, rejected, held, rejected, got up top side, and you can see it's chopped around it a little bit over here. But what we're finding most recently, just in this point here, obviously, is that it's trying to reclaim it. It tested it once on the way up, tested it twice. It's come into now and trying to hold it for the third time. So look, you could say if you're looking at just the trade itself, you could say, look, it's where we at? It's moved up, here. And really, it's just sort of consolidating like this. So people that are sort of like going to be quite sort of bullish on this would be looking probably just at this moment here and saying, yeah, look, this is quite bullish and measured move, yada yada, could give us a big breakout. I'm still in the shorter side camp because I do think that USL is going to get a little bit of a push, and I think Aussie's going to be susceptible to this. I'm still thinking and playing the idea of this wedge that it did sort of come up to, so which is this chart here, where we've kind of really sort of come up and we're just sort of like, yeah, it's overshot it a little bit here, but it overshot it a little bit here as well. These lines aren't perfect to the cent. Um, Whereas kind of like, we're seeing this wedge break
this to be a big sort of move back up and then to move back down over here. Now, as to sort of whether we're going to come down and break these levels, test these levels, that's a bit more of a question mark around it now. Because, we know that this is a strong support. This is the weekly support. This is gray zone through here. And obviously the market said, great, give me another shot to buy it here. Whoop, and they flew it up there. But again, I just think that they're buying US dollar, buying Aussie mainly from US dollars weakness, opposed to, hey, yeah, Aussie's so great. Because you got to think RBA, they're still looking to cut, and they're a lot further along this idea of cutting than the Fed are. The Fed are still sort of umming and ahhing about it. They're sort of like, oh, should we not? We've had a couple of speakers out, a couple of people sort of saying that we probably could. The RBA is pretty much, yeah, cool, let's do it. So this is why CPI in 45 minutes will be important sort of driver for it all. And if we see that the inflation's at least moving in the right direction, not an issue, then I think that that could be sort of bolstering the idea that cuts are coming sooner than they are in US dollar from the Fed. So that could weigh on Aussie a little bit there as well. So I guess like downside, if we do see this just dragging out 2 seconds right there, we can see this is a little bit of a zone through this over here. So this 38%, look, this could still just come down here and then on with the show. But it's consolidated right at the very high. So I mean, look, in sense of this bounce, this is quite bullish. As took out these highs, bang, move up over here. But as I said, I I'm playing the idea, and look, I could be wrong with this, but I will protect myself if that is the case, because I'm sick of sick of this trade. Actually, to be honest with you, it's been such a grind, this whole sort of thing through here. But the point is that if this triangle wedge breaks, which it did, it came down here, found support. Okay, boom, it comes back up. If this comes back up here, this could also be kind of like people getting short. Okay, well, here's a wedge break. Here's the short thing. People get on board. They go to home. Gets whipped up here. Not everybody's short. Like, I've got a great entry, so it protects me. But, some people would have sort of been shorting on the open yesterday, or Monday, sorry. Or maybe they shorted even just on Friday. Maybe they sort of preempted it on Friday, got short from these levels here, moved back down. More people short on the Monday, and then grinds up and just squeezes all these people out of these positions. Now it's taken out this high, it's squeezed them out of their positions. Now it can actually start to see a move down. That's the sort of feeling. This is a very sort of oil-esque kind of move. Like I've seen this like with oil a number of times where it breaks you financially and breaks you mentally, and then you see the move happen. And, if we move back up towards these levels over here, well, that's wrong. It's incorrect. They're just bouncing it and just doing exactly what they've been doing the whole time. This was a big shakeout, and most likely you're going to go higher. But as it is at the moment, it's kind of like, okay, it's starting to hit bear market because you can see you're putting in new lower lows, you're putting in lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. So it is looking bear market. It's rolling over, going down here, and then shoots right up like this. And they say that the biggest rallies are the ones in a bear market. And again, it depends what time frame you're looking at, because of course, yes, it is moving up like this, yeah. But a lot of people would have got short through these areas. A lot of indicators to go, hey, let's get short here, rip them out, and then start to move it down. So if we do see a bit of US dollar buying, if we do see it hold that sort of level there, if we see that, in maybe PCE comes in a little bit hot and sort of market starts to sort of bid up US dollar again, well, Aussie is definitely going to succumb to this to the downside here. So that's just my sort of feeling with Aussie. Obviously, sort of look, as I said, I've got the alerts here. If they goes above 65.20, then okay, I think we're going a little bit higher. I think sort of downside, see what happens with the 38% only, just for the fact that that's a fairly muted response. Let's just see what happens with it. But I think sort of this is kind of like an interesting line for me underneath sort of 64, 60, 60s and 90s typically always seem to be reoccurring numbers that warrant a reaction with Aussie. So I think sort of a bit of a confirmation will be getting down underneath this level here, and then maybe around that gap where week opened. So underneath 50 So see what happens around sort of the 60s here. But I think if it gets down underneath 50, so underneath this sort of 46 level here, I think there's a good chance you target the body fills and maybe around 64. So yeah, it takes a while. I mean, it's not going to happen in one candle. And look, as I said, it could very much still just push out the top side up over here. I'm aware of that, but that's just for a downside kind of move. If this thing is to sort of correct and come down lower, these are the little levels that I want to see to sort of confirm underneath sort of 60 and then underneath 45. These kind of levels here. All right, so move along. We got gold. Gold actually traded beautifully. So where we at the chart that we've been using. So we've got a number of things happening with gold here. So if we get onto the daily, you can see this beautifully because, yeah, of course, I've been sort of putting these charts up, been sort of, mapping this out. This whole sort of sell down through this area over here. And even last night, I put a post up on X. Where was it? This one here. So yeah, I was saying, so look, three drive coming back into supports. Expect some reaction around here in the next 10 to 15 bucks. At that time, it was 3,008. Sorry, 3,308. So that body fill line down here. So 10 to 15 bucks off that one. And as you can see, it came down here. And I think, what did we end up moving? If you can see this here, we got from that body fill line, we moved 13 and a half. So 10 to 15 bucks and it moves 13 and a half. So, you know what I mean? Like, not sort of just to sort of give myself a pat on the back for that one there, but it just means that the market is respecting the chart. And that's the big sort of, for me anyway, the big sort of takeaway. The idea that sort of like, there is some sort of structure and form to what's happening here. Because you got to think, and this, I did a little standalone video on gold last night, sort of saying that, look, if you're a buyer and you like think it's going to 3,700 or whatever, or, 4,000, and you had a chance to buy it at these levels, 3,280, and then you got another chance to buy it here, and now you've got another chance to buy it here, you'd be like, this is great. Look at this. It's going to 3,700. I could buy more. I could buy more. I don't need to chase it. Blah, 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 blah. And also you got people that are sort of like, shorting this thing, which I've sort of been going on about the last week or so, which they have been doing is that this would be a target and you'd be like, okay, yep, cool, this is the area. So the fact that it's bounced a little bit from here is perfectly normal. This is what we kind of expected. And I think this is the important part that we're looking for, this second push down into this zone here. So typical sort of thing that we also go along, you got the sell down, that's leg one. You got to push up, that'll find resistance. Maybe it'll push up a little bit higher. I'd say up to say 42 if you're going to do it there. But I think regardless of where this push comes up to, you will get this leg down here. Now, this is going to be the vital one because this is either going to reaffirm this sort of support area through here. As you can see, a number of times it was tested, and you're going to get a double bottom. If it holds here a second time, then you're either looking for a range or you're looking for a move back up. Obviously, it negates the idea that you're going down, at least in that point there. It could dribble along, and then the next one could sort of go through here. That's fine. But the point is, this leg will come. You'll either get your double bottom, you get your high low. You get your high low, well, that means you're probably going to start to see them hold this thing and move back up over here, and support's held. Or you're going to get this second drive down here, and that'll give you your break. And this is what I've been saying, that you've got this wedge set up, which broke and back tested beautifully. It's come down, it's into its support area now. This is also the confluence of this rising support that we got marked out through here. So, whoops, flying around with these charts, which you can see it's sort of gone off on a little bit of a tangent up here. Confluence with this light over here. Let's get these out of the way. You can see that this is obviously not just the horizontal into this zone here, but also this sort of rising support through here as well. So I think if you break this level, not only are you breaking the flow of this here, but you're also breaking this horizontal through here, and really a kind of a tip down to, sort of mid 31s, I think is probably the next level. So let's go and put this body fill just down on this target here. So our next target's a 3170 to down to 3130. If we do break through and close underneath, say 3270, 3260s, you close in the 3260s, you're probably going to be going down a little bit lower. And just from that trade that I said yesterday, this is the one that we were looking at, where we are on the 4 hour, wasn't it? Where was it? Yeah, so I said basically a close underneath this zone here. So if we get a close down underneath, I think I said under 40 yesterday, which obviously we got the close down here and pushed down into 32s. We were targeting 3280 to 3300. And as you can see, obviously came into that zone, tipped into it, and it's pushed back up. So yeah, it's respecting the chart at the moment, which is decent for it all. But what I'm kind of looking for is a break of these lows down here. I'm going to call this one just second effort. Just so at a second's glance, I kind of remember. It's not like, oh, gold alert's going off. What did that mean again? Um, So we break the lows here. Okay, we've still got work to do. We've still got to get down through 3270s. But if we get down through this low here, that's when we're sort of targeting these kind of lows down here. As I said on that other chart, this one here, that's when we're starting to look for potentially getting down here underneath this 3270, which these red lines are probably fibs, aren't they? Are they? Where we go. Yeah, so they're fib lines as well. So 3270, 23%. Fib as well. So yeah, look, I think that's a pretty good sort of confirmation underneath 3270, or at least a close down around this area here would sort of give me a bit more confidence. I mean, if you look at the RSI and the daily here, it's still got a little bit of room to move down here. So this isn't the kind of setup necessarily where you're going to see this thing just move straight back up over here. But we'll have to see. Aussie's actually picking up a little bit of a bid now coming into the end of the hour, half an hour from CPI as well. Um, Move along, we got silver, and silver tested right down into this zone here. So this is the sort of the kind of levels that we're kind of looking at. As I said, I still think that this could sort of roll over. It's doing everything it can to try and hold this sort of 35, 35.90, 36, 35.90 kind of area here. It's obviously wicked down a couple of times. It is starting to put in actual lower lows, and it is sort of moving down like this. We did get the bounce back up over here. Look, I think this is still somewhat sort of valid. I'm not interested in trading this at this point. I'd like to sort of see what happens when it actually sort of comes more closer. Like this is the price kind of level that I said. Look, we're going to move down and then bounce back up. I don't think this is necessarily done yet. I think this has probably got a little bit more sort of stuffing around here, then a sustained move up to the top side over here, then potentially coming down. But for me, I'm still sort of waiting on this one. It's a bit choppy for my liking, kind of thing over here. So I do think we have downside to come. I just sort of think it's going to be a couple more flick ups. I don't think it's quite cooked yet. I don't think it's quite ready to come off the boil and then sort of come back down. Move on, we've got copper. And copper sort of finding resistance kind of on point, where we had it sort of marked out. It did test up above it a couple of times. And obviously, well, not obviously, but interestingly, I should say, it's where it's found sort of support is the top of that box that we were looking at the other day. So, down through here, support, resistance, 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 comes back, no shocker, now it's support. It's a line that it needs to hold. I think topside is above sort of, basically 5. Get up to 5, continuation up. I think 511 is probably a reasonable target. If you break this thing, it'll be failed breakout of this little box and just kind of back down over here. Again, look, it's just one of those ones that copper and silver can be great traders, but they can also just be absolute nightmares to trade. I mean, if you look at the chop going through these things here, there's no sort of nice clean. Yeah, I mean, you don't always get these kind of moves here, but if you can see these kind of moves that we've had previously with copper, it's nice pull back, bang, pull back, bang. This is more just apart. I mean, disregard this. Everything died in this period here, but here it's just this like just monotonous sort of kind of grind, 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 and to me, it's kind of up the stairs can potentially lead to, up the stairs, this kind of thing, down the elevator, bang. To me, when copper was really pumping, it was in this very clear step, pullback, next level, pullback, next level. This kind of just feels a bit more just up a little bit, pull right back into that zone, up a bit, pull back, up a bit, pull back. and it just feels a bit choppy for me. So look, I mean, it could definitely push higher. It doesn't mean that we're at the top of this move here, but I'm still cautious that things are going to sort of roll over, and I will get a fast move to the downside when it does come. Who knows when it's going to come? And finally, just with USD one, it is testing out the bottom side here. So, I mean, how many times have I been sort of saying, hey, look, it's going to break up here, it's going to break up here. You can see all these targets. None of them worked out. None of the confirmations are getting there. So this time here, look, it came in where we kind of expected it to be. Well, I thought it would come a bit earlier, but the point is, into this zone, it can't even get enough buying power to get up there at the moment. It's testing out the bottom side here at the moment. I think if this sort of commits to the downside here, this could be the catalyst to get Aussie sort of pushing for a breakout. And this if this moves down, if we see DXY take out the lows, then this is going to be moving back down. There's quite a fair bit of sort of free air down here. As you can see, it broke out of that big range, made itself a new little step, new little range, stepping down. So it's stepping down. It's not super fast with it all, but probably look at down 714, 715. I would say probably be the next level that you might expect a little bit of action from. Probably around here. As you can see, sort of on the way up, this was, your resistance, resistance, resistance. They use it as a platform. So I would say that's probably what you're targeting. Should this thing sort of continue down this move here. So outside the box, it's broken its little range. Alert here, heading lower. So yuan on an absolute rip at the moment. Well, absolute rip is probably a bit of a strong word for it all, but it is sort of moving in that direction. So it's just, it's tried to get up, and just it can't find the buying it needs. A couple of times it's hit into it, and nothing. Bang, and it's knocked back down there. So, excuse me, take out yesterday's wick low. I'd say probably down to 7146 is where I'd expect probably a little bit of a reaction from the market there, but everything is looking like it does want to sort of continue this move down here. You got room to move on the RSI. This is on the daily. It's broken out and closed outside this little range. So everything's pointing to this sort of moving probably a little bit lower here. And US dollar across the board is pretty much showing the same thing as well. All right, that's it for a minute.